friends and students. This is again your friendly science teacher, grade 7 science teacher from the Zamboanga del Sur National High School, Mr. Matthew T. Sabasales. And in this podcast, I'm going to discuss to you interactions in the ecosystem. So when we talk about ecosystem, uh, we could probably start learning ecosystem by looking at the word ecology and ecosystem. So what do you think would be the difference between ecology and ecosystem? Ecology, in real sense, is the study of the relationship between living organisms and their environment. So meaning to say, if we will try to talk about ecology, it is dealing with the relationship between living organism and its environment. So ecology is a branch of science that deals, or branch of biology that deals with the study of the living things, the interaction between the living and the non-living in the environment. But when we talk about ecosystem, ecosystem is referred to a certain place, a place wherein we can observe the interaction between living and non-living things. So basically, in the case of the context of ecosystem, we will be dealing with non-living things, which is actually primarily known as the abiotic factor of the ecosystem, and the living organism, which comprises the biotic component. So there are two major things that we will be dealing with talking about ecosystem. The biotic component comprises the word bio there. The word bio here means life. So the biotic component refers to the living things, while in the case of the abiotic component refers to the non-living things. It is essential to note that when we talk about the biotic component, this refers to living things. When we talk about living things, only living things possess these different characteristics. For example, if we will try to have this particular cell phone, for example, cell phones do not actually grow. Do not. It's probably organized. Its system, its mechanism could probably be organized, but it cannot perform metabolism, and it is not irritable. Even if I'm going to slap it like this, it will not actually feel pain. So perhaps because this one lacks this particular characteristic, the cell phone can never be considered a living thing. But only those who possess these 8 characteristics are the one that can be considered living things. Okay? So let us try to look at this biotic component. These are actually the 8 characteristics of the living things as the primary component of the ecosystem, the biotic component of the ecosystem. So first of all, talk about living things. Living things grow. So growth is actually the ability to grow. As you know, talk about growth, it is following a pattern of stages of development. So living things can only is the only organism or the only thing on earth that have that pattern of development. So it grows, it have the pattern of development. Human beings are living things because it is a pattern of growth. Started from a young one, then it becomes a mature, then it becomes old, and it will die. So that's actually what we call growth. Excuse me. The next one is what we call organization. So organization is the characteristic of living things where all of its parts are highly organized, working together to enhance life. Parts of living things perhaps working together. If you can still recall the cell, if you group together cells, if they work together, they form tissues, and grouping together tissues, if they work together, they form organs, right? So there is an exact organization. Cells to become tissues, tissues to become organs, organs to become organ system, and organ system grouping together form the entire organism, which is actually highly organized. So that's what it means when we say organization. So only living things have that organized manner of its particular components. Another major characteristics of living things is that they perform metabolism. What does metabolism means? Metabolism is the ability to convert food into energy. Only living things need food, eat the food, construct the food, manufacture the food, and consume the energy found on that particular food. Now, when we convert that particular food into energy, that is what we call metabolism. So only living things perform that. The fourth characteristics of living things is irritability. As we all know, when we talk about irritability, irritability refers to the ability of the thing to respond to stimuli. Now, the question would then be, what is a stimuli? Stimuli could be anything. Pwede siya bisag unsa. For example, let me cite to you an example on this. If I'm going to bring here with you, for example, just try to imagine I am actually holding a green sliced mango, and I'm going to get one particular mango, and I'm going to eat it very crispy and very sour in taste. So what do you think could be your reaction to that? So probably at this time, some of your saliva is already moving out from your mouth, right? So that is saying that you have responded to what I have done. I have shown you a mango, the mango, I've eat it, so you have seen this one. So what the things that you have seen with the things that I am doing is actually a stimuli. It triggers into a response. So probably when we talk about stimuli, it could be anything that triggers response. Something na naka-trigger og response to anybody. So only living things can perform irritability. For example, if a cat would see a poisonous snake, eventually the cat would run. So the running of the cat means that it is irritable. It responded to the stimuli. The stimuli is the snake. Nakakita siya snake, nahadlok siya. It responded. So there is a response. So only living things can do that. Rocks, for example, you cannot actually allow reactions or respond to a rock even if you're going to hit the rock several times, right? So that is what it means when you say irritability. Another major characteristic of living things is that reproduction. We have already discussed this in the previous discussion that we have. Reproduction, the ability to reproduce an offspring in order to perpetuate species, para mapadayon ang mga species. So that's what we call reproduction. Non-living things cannot perform reproduction. Adaptability, the ability to adapt to a changing environment. Let's try to imagine this, students. What do you think will happen if I'm going to bring with you here bunch of garbages? So probably you will eventually be irritated, and you do not feel the smell. You do not like the smell because it's actually very foul, probably foul in smell. Baho kay siya, di ba? But try to think of those people living on dump sites. Kung ikaw mo atong dump site, bahuan jud ka. But if you will be living there for several years, probably little by little, you will get to adjust yourselves. Din kinahinay, dili na din kabahuan. So that is what it means when we say adaptability. Only living things can do that. Adaptability. So perhaps katong matingala ta nganong wala man na sila gipang bahuan nga nagpuyo man sila diri sa dump site. Probably because they are living things and they adapt to that environment. So naka-adapt na sila, di na sila bahuan. Kita nga wala pa naka-adapt, bahuan jud ta, right? So the same is true with us, no? For example, kinsa may nakainom sa inyo og antibiotic. So if you have drink an antibiotic is actually a medicine to kill bacteria or organisms that would actually get inside your body that causes disease. So the doctors are going to give you antibiotics, dosage of antibiotics. But if you constantly drink antibiotics, the bacteria that is actually there inside your body will eventually develop a resistance to the antibiotic. So that is why sometimes ang doctors would increase the dosage. Padaghanon nila ang dosage sa imong ipainom sa imo kay naka-adapt na ang bacteria. So since bacteria is a living thing, it can perform adaptability, right? So the next one is locomotion. All living things performs locomotion. Maybe you're going to ask me, how about the plants, sir? They cannot actually walk. They cannot actually move. But not knowing that plants do also perform locomotion. they can allow the roots to move towards different surface under the ground to search for water. That means they can also have that locomotion process. The branches will move upward and upward and upward to allow the leaves to be exposed to the sunlight. That is what it means when we say also locomotion. So even plants do perform locomotion, and some other organisms. But perhaps there are also some organisms that is actually immobile. They cannot move, but perhaps they also have some particular mechanism in them that can perform locomotion. The last one, the 8 characteristics of life as component of our ecosystem, this biotic component. So the last one is assimilation. Assimilation is the ability to make eaten food to become part of their body. Mahimong part sa body. Kaon kagayo, eventually you will become bigger and bigger because the the parts of the food, the structures of the food eventually being digested to your body and converted into basic components of your system. Eventually, you will eventually develop fats. So that is what it means when we say assimilation. The food become part of your body. That is assimilation. So which means in the biotic component of our ecosystem are all performing these 8 life characteristics. So examples of this biotic component are living things, plants, animals, fungi, the one that we have discussed in the previous chapters, the protists, and even bacteria. So they are all biotic component of our ecosystem. While with regards to abiotic components, these are the things that do not perform biological process. It do not perform these life characteristics. So, but you know what? Even if it do not perform life characteristics, the existence of this abiotic component is also essential. It's also important. Why? Because without this abiotic component in the ecosystem, living things cannot also survive. They will not also uh, be able to survive because the abiotic component are essential factors. It is necessary. For example, what are examples of abiotic component? Water. Mabuhi bang life, mga living things without water? No, it's not. The soil. Mga plants. Mabuhi ba kung walay soil? No, it's not. Temperature. Temperature is also important. In fact, the body temperatures of human being must be maintained into 37 degrees Celsius. Below that, you will experience hypothermia. That's what we call a certain disease, wherein you will not be at peace. If the temperature in your body will also exceed from 37 degrees Celsius for up to 38, 39, hilanta na kaana, and eventually you will get sick. So temperature is also important among living things. The climate, the weather that we have, it's also essential. It's a biotic component, but it's essential. The air. So these are all particular important abiotic component. But not only this, there are still so many abiotic component. The rocks, minerals. So they are all very important to living things. With regards to ecosystem varies in size. Some of them are very, very big. Some of them are very, very small. But in order to study the entire ecosystem, ecologists often study small aspect of the ecosystem, and then work with other ecologists to piece together the overall picture of how the ecosystem functions, right? So within an ecosystem, we could probably look into the biotic component. So with regards to the biotic component, single kind of organism is what we call species. If species within an ecosystem refers to those living things that can reproduce and have young that can also reproduce, then when the number of individuals of the same species within an ecosystem is grouped together, mahimo silang population. So meaning to say, species, isa ka grupo, isa ka klase nga organism, one kind of organism that is capable of reproducing, and ang iyang gi-reproduce, maka-reproduce food to perpetuate life. We call that species. That's the definition of species. But grouping together species, many organism on the same species, we can form the so-called population. See? And different population will be grouped together. Lain-lain nga mga population. Population sa mga tao, population sa mga iring, population sa mga iro, population sa mga sagbot, population sa mga kahoy, sa mga santol, sa mga mangga, sa mga baki. Grouping together all of this population will form the so-called community. Okay? So community is a group of population and population is a group of species. Okay? There are several things that is needed by living things. Perhaps living things need food. Pinaka-importante nga need sa mga organism. And living things also need habitat, suitable habitat. Different organisms have different habitat. The frog, for example, it has its own habitat. If you bring a frog into a different habitat, not suited for the frog will die. Another important needs of a living thing is water and gases. So water para makainom and gases for the exchange of gases for a respiration process. So with regards to these living things in the ecosystem, there are interactions among these living things. Mag-interact ang mga living things. I think you're very familiar with this because you've been studying this from elementary grades. Predation, for example. Interaction between two organisms in which the other one is a predator, the one that will eat or consume the other organism. Ang katong gi-consume mo ito gitawag og prey. So prey, predator, and prey relationship, we call that predation. Example, goat and grass, buffalo and lion, snake feeding on rat. So the snake is the predator, the rat is the prey. Buffalo is the prey, the lion is the predator. The goat is the predator, the grass is the prey. These are actually predation process. Competition, another interaction between two organisms that is using the same limited resources. Mag-ilog sila, mag-compete sila onto a specific need from the environment. So example of this is flowering plants and weeds of the same post. Ang mga flowering plants o mga sagbot, mag-compete na sila. They will compete on water, nutrient on the soil, at the same time, sunlight. So, cheetahs and lion will compete on the same prey. Mag-ilog sila kinsay mukaon sa buffalo. So, see, that is competition. And another interaction is what we call symbiosis. Symbiosis, on the other hand, are two species live closely together on a relationship that lasts over time, or symbiotic relationship. We call it symbiotic relationship. So when two species live closely together, nga makalast because either nagtinabangay sila or we call that symbiosis. There are three forms of symbiosis. Mutualism. This occurs when the relationship of two different organisms, when each partner is benefited from the other with each other. So mutualism, ang isa ka organism naka-benefit sa isa, o ang isa po naka-benefit sa isa, nagtinabangay sila, mutualism ang tawag. Another one is parasitism, symbiosis, nagkuyog yapon silang duha. The other one is harm, the other one is benefited. So katong na harm, gitawag to sila og the host. Pero ang naka-benefit ang parasite. So parasitism ang tawag ana. So ang na-harm ang host, kaya ang host mo man gipuy-an dito sa parasite. So the parasite is being benefited. Parasitism is the relationship. Next one is commensalism, the third form of symbiotic relationship. So this occurs wherein two different organisms, the other partner is benefited while the other one wala siya na benefit, wala po siya na harm. So may example ani niya. So there is a mutualism, example na to sa mutualism, good bacteria inside a human intestine. Kaya ang good bacteria yamang gitabangan ang tao. Just like kato akong gingon sa inyo nga yogurt ug katong Yakult. Bacillus, lactobacillus. Bacteria siya nga makapa-drive away sa mga bad bacteria. So gitabangan niya ang tao. On the other hand, natabangan po siya sa tao kaya some of the nutrients taken from the will be absorbed and be utilized by the mutualism ang tinabangay. So tinabangay sila, walay na harm nila. But on the other hand, parasitism. Ang isa na harm, ang isa wala na harm. Example, fungi at the back of the tree. Ay fungi dito, ang fungi nagsigsupsop sa nutrient coming from the tree. Roundworms, kana inyong mga bitok sa inyong tiyan. So kanang bitok ninyo, parasite na sila. Na benefit sila, then ang mga tao, kamo, nga naibitok, na harm. Okay? While on the other hand, commensalism, one example for this is that ang isa na benefit, ang isa, wala siya na harm, wala po siya na benefit. So example for this is kaning sea anemone. Do you know what a sea anemone is? Ang sea anemone, dito na lang, clownfish. Do you know what a clownfish? So kung kailan mo ni Nemo, Nemo is a clownfish. So si Nemo, nagpuyo siya sa usa ka sea anemone. Ang sea anemone, makakuha ng sea anemone, nana siya poisonous. Poison, that is why some other fish will not actually go near a sea anemone because it can sting. It produces a sting that is actually irritable to different fishes. So, ang clownfish on the other hand, dili siya madutlan sa sting sa sea anemone. So, munang dito siya magpuyo sa sea anemone kay maproteksyonan siya dito. So, the clownfish is protected by the sea anemone. No other fish will eat the clownfish because of the sea anemone. On the other hand, the sea anemone, wala siya na benefit, wala po siya na harm. The clownfish will just stay there. The relationship with that is what we call commensalism. Another example, orchid plant on the trunk of the tree. Ang orchid, nagpuyo siya sa trunk of the tree, kay aerial man ang orchid plant. So, kinahanglan siya nasa ibabaw. So, it will eventually be benefited while living on the trunk of the tree. But the trunk of the tree, wala ra po siya na harm, wala ra po siya na benefit. So, that is what we call commensalism. Energy in the ecosystem. Ang mga energy of the ecosystem is distributed. The ultimate source of energy in the ecosystem is the sun. The sun now will produce the energy, and the energy will be transported to the earth, and it will be received by the plants. The plants are actually, the grass for example, are the producers. They are called producers because they will convert the sunlight, the water, and the carbon dioxide into sugar, the basic food molecule. So, mahimo silang producer. But the grass will be eaten by the caterpillar. The caterpillar is what we call the first order consumer. They consume the producers. But this first order consumer is also eaten by the second order consumer, the chicken. And the chicken will also be eaten by the snake, the third order consumer. But if you will try to look at this, the energy distribution of this manner is actually from highest energy level, 100% sa producers, magkagamay na lang dayon. 10% na lang sa first order consumer, 1% na lang sa second order consumer, and 0.1% na lang sa third level consumer. So which means the greatest energy is being absorbed by the plant, so they are the one that possess the greater energy. And as the consumers consume or eat these particular producers and some other consumers, the energy level will decrease. We call this the food pyramid. That is how the food pyramid will eventually be explained. No? You can still remember that from your elementary grades. So the energy in the ecosystem originally comes from the sun and the producers. The producers is actually what we call autotrophs. There are two kinds of autotrophs. Autotrophs, kato maka-perform of photosynthesis using sunlight, water, and carbon dioxide, and chemoautotrophs. Ang chemoautotrophs, they can produce food gihapon, but they will use the process known as chemosynthesis. Mo-capture sila energy through the bonds of inorganic molecules such as hydrogen sulfide. So, beneath the ocean floors, there are also some organisms that can perform chemosynthesis. They cannot actually, sunlight cannot actually reach there, but still they can manufacture their own food. So, kana nga mga producers, nga mga autotrophs, chemoautotrophs na, they will produce food, but they will not use sunlight. They will only use hydrogen sulfide. So, they can actually manufacture their own food through that process. So, examples of these producers are the plants, the algae, some protists, and some bacteria. That is actually the examples of producers. But on the other hand, consumers, kung may mga consumers, muna sila ang mga nag-consume, nag-eat sa mga producers and some other consumers. So, ang tawag ani mga consumers karon, they are called heterotrophs. So, heterotrophs eat organism to obtain energy. For example, ang mga herbivores, mukaon sila og plants. Only plants. Eat only plants. Example, horse, cow, goats, and many more. Napoy malain nga mga heterotrophs, gitawag og carnivores. They eat only animals. Animals na po nilang i-eat. Like lion, tiger, jaguar, panther, and many more. Pero when we say omnivores, just like human beings, we are omnivores. We eat both plants and animals like human beings. Pero napoy gitawag og detritivores or the scavengers. Kani mga detritivores, they feed on dead plant and animals remains like vultures. Ito mga matay na ng mga plants and animals, ginakaon na siya, dead organic matter. Ginakaon ang mga scavengers, ang mutawag na nila. Example of scavengers are vultures. Then the last one, the last heterotrophs are the decomposers. Decomposers like fungi and bacteria obtain nutrient from decaying dead organism and were able to return the nutrient of dead organic matter back into the soil. So that is actually the decomposer. I think you're very familiar with this. Feeding relationship, kanang pagkaon-kaon nga relationship. So first, we have the so-called food chain and we have the so-called food web. Kasi kalainan sa food chain o food web. Sa food chain, isa lang ka path. One path of the energy flow in one direction. Here is an example of a food chain. We have here kaning lag. Kaning lag, malata na siya because of the fungi and the bacteria, because it's already dead, and the nutrient will be returned back into the soil. And the soil now will have the nutrient, it will benefit these particular plants. The plants now, this corn for example, will grow and benefited from the dead log. Then the dead log will be eaten by, and not the log, but the plant, the corn, will be eaten by the rat. Ang rat pod, kaunon pod sa cat. So the cat now, kung mamatay ang cat, balik na pod siya sa ground. Kanina po mga decomposers like fungi and bacteria ang mo decompose niya. Balik na po sa ground, ato na po sa plant. So food chain, this is a chain. Chain of food and energy is distributed in one particular path. Pero in the case of food web, lahi sa food web, wala na, it's a series, a combination of many food chain. For example, grass, ikaon ang mouse, ikaon po ang grasshopper. So, then ang mouse ikaon sa owl, ang mouse po nga uban ikaon sa hawk, then ang mouse ikaon po sa fox. Pero ang fox, for example, ikaon po rabbit, ang rabbit ikaon po grass. Then ang grasshopper ikaon po sa frog, ang frog ikaon po sa owl. So it will be a web. There will be no single chain. It is a series of chain. Ang grass ikaon sa grasshopper, ang grasshopper ikaon sa bird, ang bird ikaon sa snake. Pero ang snake mukaon po frog. Nga ang frog nagkaon po grasshopper. So it will be a mixture. We call that food web. Food chain, food web. So these are all the necessary things that you need to know with regards to interaction in the ecosystem in grade 7 science. So please, you can review the video. You can actually play back the video so that you can watch the entire discussion that we have about interaction in the ecosystem. But before that, I will show you one particular video that would summarize everything regarding this idea of interaction among living things, predation, competition, symbiosis, mutualism, and parasitism, and commensalism. So, please watch this video for a short while. Then, after that, we will end this podcast. that's it. So, thank you very much for watching. I have here with me your worksheet for introduction on the ecosystem. So please grab a copy of this worksheet, answer it, and submit it to me as soon as I return. Okay? And have also grab a copy also of this handout. Uh, I will be assigning somebody in your class to photocopy the handout. So just sit back, review the video, and answer the worksheet. So that's all for this particular podcast. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you have learned something. Have a nice day. This is your friendly science teacher from Zamboanga del Sur National High School, Mr. Matthew T. Sabasales.